choose to proceed with the development. Is that correct, Mr. Smith and Mr. Harris?
That's my view on it, yes.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Kyle. Why wasn't this brought before the planning commission initially as PUD?
Well, because when we initially, we first sat down with staff, we talked about what is required for a grocery store in your ordinance, and C4 is the classification. That's what we find.
Even though y'all have 102 of these stores, another question I have is the PUD must be of a character and contain such uses that are needed in the area of proposed project. There's a grocery store 9 blocks to the east and another one 6 or 8 blocks to the west. How in the world is it needed out there? That's 3 grocery stores in 17 blocks.
Well, most of your population's on that part of town, like David said in the statistics. That's where most people live, and that's what our study showed, that this area needed a grocery store.
Because the one over there, 7 blocks west, went out of business 3 or 4 years ago because there wasn't enough business there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I do because I've been living here, but there's a grocery store 7 or 8 blocks west of where you're proposing this that went out of business because it didn't have enough business to keep it open. So that flies in the face of the notion that we need another grocery store in between it and this other one 17 blocks away.
It's called competition.
It's not the city's responsibility.
Y'all had 4 or 5 pharmacies in Walgreens.
I just want to know how we're meeting 2.16.5, and that's all I'm asking. Here's my 3 concerns. The PUD shall provide public benefits that would not be achievable through normal zoning regulations. If you got to rezone, you can do it, and strike 1. The PUD shall be compatible with the city's comprehensive plan. It is not. It might be if it were amended, but as it stands right now, it is not. Strike 2. The PUD must be of a character and contain such uses that are needed in the area of proposed object. Perhaps that's objective. But those other 2, I mean subjective, but those other 2 are not.
Let me make a suggestion. I know we've got a point of disagreement in regard to this. If there's more question in regard to it, okay. If there isn't, let's move on to another question. I would expect some response in regard to the question, so we can move on for the sake of reducing the argument.
Mr. Irwin, I'll provide you with multiple cases in Arkansas, and that will do it after the meeting out here.
We have a question from the public at this time.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Steve Jellius. I'm the president of UFCW Local 2008. It represents the Kroger workers. And clearly in the ordinance it says there has to be a need. And I have a study here that I'll provide you that was done on a neighborhood market in Seattle. A little different scenario, but it outlined a lot of the very same points that Wal-Mart has been arguing about because of the population density and all this. But what it came down to, what the bottom line was, is that the jobs they create, it's a net loss. Net loss economically, net loss in jobs, because their jobs average $8.50 an hour. Kroger workers make part-time $10 an hour with full benefits and pensions. Walmart does not provide benefits to part-timers, and their full-timers can't afford their benefits. So the economic advantage, you're going to have 80 new employees that are going to be in public assistance in Russellville. Okay? Because that's what the studies show for Walmart workers. They can't afford the insurance that Walmart provides, so they go on public assistance. Where here, we have workers in this town. The only incentive for Walmart to put a store there is they want to stop the traffic from going past to Kroger. They want to put something in between. Mr. Irwin is absolutely correct. There was a store there where that Shop and Save or Cash and Save went out 3 years ago because they didn't have enough business. They couldn't compete. There are only so many grocery dollars in Russellville. They're being used now. Okay? People are shopping. We're not going to see more shopping because they put a neighborhood market at the end of West Main. You've got the same grocery dollars in Russellville. All it's going to do is redistribute it, and it's going to redistribute it to a company that provides a lower wage, a lower benefit, which actually creates a net loss economically to this city. and I have a study to prove it. It was not done by the UFCW, it was done by an outside group, and I'd be happy to email it to you. And some of the other comments they made about women being helped with Wal-Mart and minorities, I have a lot of statistics right here that I can provide you, but that's not true. So it's not the kind of employer we want in Russellville. It's not the kind of jobs we want in Russellville, and there's no economic advantage to put a neighborhood market in Russellville. And I'm happy to provide this with you, if you'd like it. Thank you.
If you would,
I have copies of some of it, and I'll give you the one copy of the economic.
go to the website if you would like and provide that information.
Absolutely.
Mayor?
Absolutely.
I'd like for y'all also to look at the Walmart's website, because they say the average employees in the state are paid over $11 an hour, not $8. There's also, I mean, that's on their website,
On Walmart's website?
Walmart's website.
Right. This is done
And
by
that's
an outside
insane.
group. Okay. Outside group.
And also have another report here, which we got to show you. The average sales, Kroger's average sales be $454,000 a week, and Walmart's neighborhood market.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. We have some more time. And we have a couple more
Go ahead.
people from the
Was this passed by the planning commission?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it was.
So it was passed by the planning commission. Let me say this much. How many hoops have these people got to jump through to get this? They haven't far beyond. There's 200 feet there. They went far beyond that. This is basically a capitalist system. They're gonna make money, or they wouldn't put, $8 million in there? It's up to them. It's not up to you to say that you can't make a profit. It's up to them to do it. And they went far beyond anything of what else is gonna go in that area. It may be worse than that.
My concern, sir, is that they haven't followed the rules that have been laid out by our ordinance.
That's up to policy. What you need to do, if it's passed by the planning commission, you ought to go to them and say, why did you pass this?
Well, that's why the city council reviewed it, we're not bound to.
Exactly. I feel sorry for how many hoops that these people got to jump through, and it looks beautiful.
Well, I'll tell you this, I'll say this, after having talked about this with other members of this council, I'll tell you right now that there's not a single one of us sitting here that is not reluctant and careful to not make a decision based on providing a competitive edge to one side or the other. And however, and I will say this, that I think one of the things that we are absolutely bound by duty to consider is net jobs, and I don't know how we really do that, but so we're not making a decision based on circumventing the competitive nature of our economy. And other than that, I do. Here's what I'd like to. And Mr. Oaks, maybe you can answer this question for me. We're looking at 90 to 120 trucks a month, weighing an average of 70,000 pounds on Vancouver, West Main Street, Vancouver. Is that correct? Those streets, are those designed to absorb that sort of traffic? If so, for how long?
I can't give you a definitive answer to that question. I could say that as public streets, they are designed to handle that kind of loading, especially Highway 64, of course.
About Vancouver, and for how long? I mean, what are we looking at? Reducing the average life of
The average life of a surface, the street itself has got an almost indeterminate life, but it has to be overlaid occasionally or repaired. And you look at overlays as being about a 12-year cycle.
And, I mean, does,
When
adding that amount of truck traffic and that waste, does that reduce that substantially?
Only an opinion, I don't have any,
That's what
I
I'm
haven't
looking for,
performed a
professional
study or
opinion.
read a study specifically regarding those kinds of numbers, but in my experience, I believe that Vancouver could handle the traffic and handle the weight. It'd be very difficult to determine whether that shortened the life by 6 months or 2 months or something like that, but it would be in that range, I would think.
Okay, that's really just.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith, is one of the ordinances that you've worked on, does it have a clause in there about Wal-Mart being responsible for the first X number of 100 feet of Vancouver?
Yeah, I think we put one of them in there. As to,
So if it did cause an issue to the street, if they were assuming responsibility for 5, 6, 400 feet, whatever it is, then that excess activity, wear and tear would be covered at that expense.
that's
Under
correct,
that.
if that's what everybody agrees to.
Okay, there is a young lady that's had her hand up back there for quite some time. Yes, ma'am.
To touch on what you said about the planning commission, because they approved it, this board should approve it. I'm gonna put that in terms of, like, say, the United Nations. The Security Council is the only board that can actually make decisions, or the other committees are only there to advise resolutions to them, such as what the planning commission is to y'all. They can only advise what you should do. Just because they approve it doesn't mean that you should. They're just an advisory committee. Anyway, touching on what he said, just a little bit about the grocery store that's now Cash Saver. Actually, 2 grocery stores have been in that building that have gone out of business. There was Four Seasons and another one I think was called the Marketplace, and now it's a Cash Saver. 3 different grocery stores have been in that area, and 2 of which have gone out of business. Now I'd like to talk about the traffic study that was conducted. The traffic study says in one of the bullets, and actually the first bullet, says this report of methodology and findings relating to the traffic engineering study was undertaken to, and the first bullet says, evaluate existing traffic conditions in the vicinity of the site. And the vicinity, the legal definition of a vicinity from the Merriam-Webster dictionary is a surrounding area or district, a neighborhood. In the very next bullet after that, it says, determine projected traffic volumes entering and exiting the proposed development at the adjacent study. Intersections of West Main Street and Vancouver Avenue, West Main Street and Utah Avenue. That doesn't have anything to do with the neighborhoods. You are not looking at the traffic that's going in and out of the neighborhoods. You're only looking at what's coming in and out of Vancouver and Utah. That has nothing to do with the people who live there, who are going to feel that every single day, who are going to see that. It was brought to my attention that a $125,000 fund of some sort was proposed to the city to,
Mitigation.
well, he said to mitigate, but if I have a statement here that says that it is to pay for street improvements to extend West 2nd Street to South Tulsa Avenue to the proposed, or from South Tulsa Avenue, to the proposed neighborhood market, and to pay for the installation of a sidewalk from the neighborhood market to Bradley Lane. In my understanding, that's not the same as mitigating, and as Mr. Giles said when he was presenting that, they don't own that property from the end of where they want to build onward, so they have no control over that, yet they want to pay for a sidewalk to put in. I just found that a little confusing, but I thought that $125,000, instead of building a new street, which I don't think those funds are sufficient to completely up and build a brand new street and to build a sidewalk all in one, I think those funds should be put towards another traffic study to see how the traffic is going to increase in the neighborhood, since that's what the traffic study said it was going to do, but didn't actually do. Also, I would like to talk about actually I just have a real quick question, and then I'll talk about this. That dashed line that's on there, you say that's where the noise and the light is going to stop? Is that what that's representing, the red dashed line? The red dashed line. Okay, so, but I heard something about the dashed lines where the light was going to stop, or something of that and the absolute threshold of light is a candle flame at 30 miles away, and for noise is the tick of a watch under quiet conditions up to 20 feet away. Trees and a fence is not gonna, when I see you're laughing, you can look it up, you can call me on it, I can bring you in my psychology book and you can read it for yourself. It's been proved a multitude of times, and I mean, I didn't believe it the first time I heard it, but I mean, I'm in AP psychology and I understand that. But the people who live in the neighborhood in Brookside Subdivision, Deer Run, they'll tell you that you can hear the trains that go by on the train tracks at night, and you can hear them clearly. You can hear the whistle, you can hear the wheels rolling on the track. Clearly, I hear it almost every night. Anytime there's a train, I can hear it at my house. And I don't live very close to Main Street, but I live in that area. You can hear the trains. That's a perfect example of how trees and the fence are not going to stop sound, they're not going to stop light. And on the housing study that was brought up, have there been any follow-up studies to the one that was done by Chicago University to prove that there was no bias involved in that study? I don't know the details of that study, but I don't see how you can just go off of what one study says and say that that's like the truth. If there's not a follow-up study, that's just like experimentation 101. You have to be able to redo your statistics over and over again in order to say that they're truthful. But anyway, thank you for your time, and again, I encourage you to do another traffic study affecting the neighborhood, since that's what you said you were going to do in the first place. Thank you.
Expanding on that,
Well, go ahead.
we included counts on Vancouver, 24-hour count, two-way directional counts, as well as AM and PM counts. We do know from those volumes what's coming and going from the south, from Vancouver to Maine. So they're well below collector street standards, even with the.
But what's gonna happen to Bradley and what's gonna happen to Phoenix? There's gonna be loops around in that neighborhood that she's talking about that you didn't study.
Who's gonna loop around?
People are gonna go from Phoenix to Bradley to South Vancouver.
Let me say, first of all, we're not in the debate here tonight, okay? That's not what this meeting is for. Now, if you have a statement that you'd like to make, that'll be fine, and we'll do it in an orderly manner. But if it gets to the point where it's contentious, we'll end the meeting and go from there. So we'll do this one at a time. Yes.
Some topics that I would appreciate the council considering. First, Mr. Irwin hit on the legality of the process that's being utilized. The zoning code that's been adopted by the city of Russellville was adopted and amended after the 1998 comprehensive plan is talked about. In other words, our city did a good job about 14 years ago of creating a vision for the orderly development of the city of Russellville. They then amended the comprehensive zoning plan to make sure that it was in accordance with the comprehensive plan. And that's why it reflects it, like on page 33 under PUDs, where it says, going forward after 1998, if you want to establish a PUD, in other words, if you want to get outside of the normal traditional zoning classifications, R1, C1, M1, things like that, you have to do it in a way that's in accordance with our city's comprehensive plan. You just have to. And the words used are shall, will, and must. That means that they're legally binding on this group. And so when you stand up on January 1st and you take your oath of office, I promise to uphold the laws of the United States, the state of Arkansas, the city of Russellville, you promised that you would follow this will, and this shall, and this must. And so if you don't do it, it's not just a procedure that maybe we need to jerry-rig around. You're violating your basic oath for being here. So I would encourage the council as a primary consideration to read the actual law that governs why we're here tonight. Mr. Giles, very able and known him for a long time, consider him a peer. He referred you to the land use code as what he was talking about, and then he referred to the comprehensive plan as not being binding. The zoning ordinance is binding. It is in fact the law. And to the extent that the zoning code says you will follow the comprehensive plan, well then you will. And if you don't, a circuit judge is going to tell you you should have. And that's just why we live in town and not in the country. Because we get the benefit of having stable zoning so that when we build our $150,000, $200,000 house in the neighborhood, the guy next to us can't have 16 coon dogs or a chicken farm or a sewer treatment plant. Because we've got city zoning, and we keep our city zoning stable, okay? So first consideration, please consider the process. Really look at 2.16.5 on page 33, which says, before any PUD is approved, the following criteria will govern the approval or disapproval. It shall provide public benefits not achievable through normal zoning regulations. Well, we all know that there's a Riverside furniture site that has 27 plus acres that's zoned commercial. We all know there's numerous other acreage on Parkway that's zoned commercial. We know there's property way out on West Main that's zoned commercial. All of which is not urban sprawl. That's misinformation. It's all within 10, 15, 20 blocks of this site. We know that there is property that could be for sale on West Main itself. Plus, we know that we already have 2 other grocery stores and 5 plus pharmacies. So we know it can be achievable through normal zoning regulations. Kroger was in a commercial site. Cash Saver built in a commercial site. USA Drug put theirs in a commercial site, and then they changed their corporate plan, and now it's a dark hole that we may have for multiple years in the city of Russellville. Okay. So that's all I'm going to say about the first part. But please consider the review process and the criteria that you promised you would require a PUD to meet. Don't just say we can figure out a way around it. Next. The comprehensive plan for the city of Russellville says we want residential property, and so in compliance with that plan, Brookside and Brookview have all been built right to the south of this proposed location. All mainly within the last 15 years. I know the mayor's house is back there, and it's less than 10 years old, and he's one of the many that were built there. I bought my house in 2001, right after the plan was implemented, and it's 0.2 miles from this location. We decided to make those investments with our dollars, with the understanding that they weren't going to be compromised. And Wal-Mart has said this deal right here is not going to compromise it. They've said, we've got an appraisal that shows that my house values and the other neighbors' house values are not going to be compromised. Okay? That's from an appraiser that is not in any way connected with Polk County or Russellville. Look at what has been submitted to you. It's B.A. McIntosh out of Pulaski County. Okay? His comparables use Kroger's area, and they talk about prices in the 2000s. They didn't talk about the price before Kroger, which when we all grew up, it was TG&Y. They didn't talk about before you put in TG&Y and after. They just talked about the last 10 years. I've handed you a Russellville appraiser with all the appropriate certifications study that shows that if you use that same methodology that these people want you to believe, that you might as well put a sewer plant right next to my house. Because you can take the exact same methodology and say that the property value increases around Jimmy Lyle Road are the result of the sewer plant being there, or the lumber mill, or the waste, the dump over in Dardanelle. You can get the same value increases now in the last 10 years and call them attributable to the development that's nearby. That's not a methodology. Okay. I'll put it back. I'm sorry, not there. Okay. I think you're right about that. Let's do it over here. All right. Okay. We're going to do this. people just can't manage things, and I'm one of them. The next thing to consider is, let's say you guys decide to not comply with the zoning ordinance, we're just gonna do it, okay? We're gonna rezone this property, and as Mr. Giles has said, that doesn't control what's gonna happen here, what's gonna happen here, which is several acres, or the multiple acres that Carter. How many of you guys are gonna build your $200,000 house where 4 semis are driving by every day, and where you got a 180 space parking lot across the street? Well, nobody. You know what it's zoned? Residential. Okay? So what's gonna happen? You know, what's the forethought that as our city visionaries, our planners, our council, what forethought do we have here? How much of this is gonna go commercial? Now, this literally backs up to the fences on a subdivision in people's backyards. So if you let this go commercial, then it's not 500 feet from somebody's house, it's 6 inches from their property line. Well, what are you gonna do right here? And what are you gonna do right here? Because now you're bordering up people's houses again. Is this just gonna be property that lays fallow forever, or what's the plan? How far are we gonna let this considerable change in our comprehensive plan extend? What's the thought process? Why wouldn't the city planner and the public works office be tasked with the responsibility on the front end of saying, how is this going to affect future growth? Okay, let's get to that then point. The traffic study, which was not done by a Russellville engineer, it was not done by the guy who put in most of the city streets over the past 15 years, but I did provide you a study by that guy, the engineer Morgan Barrett, who says that the traffic study regarding proposed traffic increases from this side, he says the assumptions that are utilized in that study take as a given that most traffic won't be coming from the south. Therefore, the conclusion is the traffic will not largely increase from the south. Well, it doesn't take a genius to say if you start with those assumptions, you're going to get that conclusion. Mr. Barrett says if you take more reasonable assumptions, you should assume that from this development alone, you will see at least a 100% increase in traffic flow on Vancouver. Okay? Now then let's factor in what happens next. When you get the nail salon and the discount tobacco store and the tire and lube store that come next, how much extra is that going to affect traffic? Now then here's the next point. This 200 or so feet here was built with a center lane, and I guess they're proposing to put a sidewalk here. You get to Bradley, and you have what? You have an offset intersection, and then it goes down to 2 lanes with no center lane, with no sidewalks, because city planners, visionaries did not require the developers to put that in, because they never anticipated this to be utilized for this purpose. They assumed, as the comprehensive plan says, it's going to be used for PUD quiet office, medical, so you're going to end up with maybe 40 parking spots, not 180. So what happens at that offset intersection? How does that affect traffic backing up? What happens when you get to the narrower streets south of Bradley that were not ever designed as collector streets? They're just residential streets, just like the ones in front of each of your houses. How does that create congestion at the intersection of Bradley and Vancouver? How does that back up traffic going east and west? How does that back up traffic on Honeysuckle? This street was designed to divert traffic from the excess use on Phoenix and Inglewood. There were not enough north-south arteries 13 years ago to handle traffic flow. Now you built an extra 200 plus homes in the area immediately south of Vancouver, and you're going to put a stoppage at the other end of Vancouver before you can get to Main Street. What's that going to do? It's going to discourage the use of Vancouver and route traffic that's not going to Wal-Mart back to the original streets that Vancouver was designed to help the flow of traffic from. These are the considerations that I think that if I were on the city council or the planning commission that I would have, and that I hope that you will consider. Over and above that, if you think that the interests of the people who live in the area are important, look at that petition that Wal-Mart provided. Look at any Facebook messages or posts and see what the questions say. If you poll the people that live in this area is a new grocery store needed over and above the one we got? And do you want this Walmart right here in your neighborhood? They're gonna say no. Not 100%, but I guarantee you 85% are gonna say no, absolutely not. Not right here, not in a residential area. And I don't blame them. Nobody else would want a Walmart located 200 or 500 feet from their house. We have ample commercial space, and one thing I want y'all to understand is that, well, two things actually. The realtor mentioned earlier that there are like 100 or so neighborhood markets. They, according to their websites, hope to get 2,600 of these. This is the new method of growth for Walmart. The Sam's have saturated the suburbs, so they need infill stores in the existing areas, run other grocery stores out of business, which is fine. I'm all for competition. I don't want to come here and legislate against new lawyers coming into town. Welcome them, every one of them. Hope to beat everyone when they get here, okay? But this is their new strategy. They want 2,600 of these, and they have a methodology that they're employing to get these stores in at the cheapest cost. And if you've noticed, since the day they proposed this, you've already got them up several $100,000 from where they started. And they have backup sites already located. They have commercial zones that they'll put this in. They're just trying to start and see what they can get out of the city. I don't blame them. I'd want to get the best cherry off the tree too. That's called cherry picking. But your job is not to let one business come and take commercial advantage of the city's zoning code. It is to make sure that the businesses adhere with the zoning code unless they provide some substantial reason to change the zoning code other than our traffic count shows this is where we're most profitable. And at the end of the day, that's all that Walmart will say. We don't care what the people in the ward think. We don't care how much money the city of Russellville spent on its planning and comprehensive plan. We don't care what the existing zoning classification is. We want, for the cheapest price possible, you to put a store in a place that gives us the best economic advantage, period. And in 10 years, when we decide to go over to the north side of town, because growth is now in that area, and leave this vacant, like the one on East Main, you better have a really good abatement provision in your ordinance, because they're not going to do anything about it. And to that end, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to call you a realtor, but I forgot your name.
We don't even go into the way on there right
Okay. I'm currently representing the defendants in the lawsuit that Walmart has filed because they are in fact the lessors and persons controlling the use and occupancy of the former Walmart, then former National Home Center store. They actually, we are currently conducting discovery on why they have taken no steps whatsoever to mitigate my client's damages by attempting to release the property. And today, they have not provided one attempt they have made to release the property, although they are the party in possession.
Mr. Mayor, this is
All right to
pending
this.
litigation. Do we have to air this right here?
No,
Thank you.
no.
Was it public record?
Do we have any more questions?
Well, I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
No, not of Mr. Peel, exactly. I'm back to traffic. I'm back to the traffic. I have a problem comprehending the traffic surveys. I can go along with 20,000 people going up and down West Main. My question is to the Walmart guys, how many people a day do you anticipate will come and go from that store, and how many of those people are going to be trying to turn in that short distance right there on Vancouver Street? Because I realize that I think one of your motives for coming on that side of town is for the pharmacy business. I know you're saying grocery store, but I was in medical for years and my office was out on West Main. I've spent 35 years of my life on West Main. So I'm very familiar with West Main and all the challenges that West Main has encountered over the years. So I think to me it's all about money. But I do see this to be sort of a hindrance, not a sort of, I think it is a hindrance to this neighborhood have invested their savings to buy these homes, and they're nice homes. And Vancouver is their only outlet really to get to Main Street unless you go back up Bradley Lane to Phoenix. Or go over Honeysuckle and come down that other street over there, that's a problem. So I ask again, and when you say you've done the study on Vancouver, how can you even think about numbers, such a small increase in traffic, when it hasn't happened yet?
The IT trip generation software is what we typically use, and it's nationally used for any type of retail, residential, office development. And for the square footage of this type of use, it's expected to generate 4,300 trips a day, which is half of that's entering and half exiting. So 2,150 entering, 2,150 exiting.
Per day?
Per day.
See, I think there'll be that many in pharmacy.
It's just the IT trip
So
generation.
where are the grocery shoppers coming from, I guess?
That includes, these types of uses include pharmacy and grocery.
You realize that you're talking about between Miller Henry Clinic and all the doctor offices on that town. And I think from what I've researched, Wal-Mart is probably the largest medical provider, medicine provider in the United States, am I right? With all their managed care agreements and their ability to do 2%, 3% prescriptions. So I'm saying that I think y'all are way low on the numbers of people that can be expected in that area. And I think, and I live up on the hill of Skyline Drive. I have the privilege of looking down at the valley. I see more than Vancouver. I see all the way over past the middle school, etc. I see hundreds of homes, not just a few. And yet there are only like 2 avenues, Bradley Lane and Honeysuckle, that you can zigzag through there. I'm not mentioning Vancouver